Hey, friends. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Ssemanda, the intuitive psychiatrist, and you're listening to Stepping into Soul Power. Friends, so no man is an island. And we are on this spiritual path. We are on our spiritual journey. And part of that journey is learning to connect with other people. And sometimes it's with people who are very different from where we come from or what we believe. And and we are in a period where we're faced with some heavy problems. There's a mental health crisis. We got food insecurity. People don't have housing. The problems are real and the problems are global, and we will need to work together and figure it out. Our next guest is wonderful at creating bridges, not barriers, unlocking ways to collaborate with compassion. Bishop Kevin Foreman, a pastor, coach, author, philanthropist. Welcome to the show.
I am so glad to be with you today. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for what you do. I think those two signs behind you, inspire and love, are so apropos for you because I love your holistic approach, mind, body, soul. I love it. What good is having, a great body and you lost your mind? And so I love the way you do what you do. So thanks for having me, and I hope you keep doing what you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, let's get into it. I work in medicine and I see this where we've got our political leaders here, we've got our spiritual leaders here, medical establishment is here, healers are here, creatives are here, and everybody's in
Mhm.
these different camps, these different
Right.
silos. But we collectively have some huge issues. What I'd
Right.
like to hear from you is what do you think is keeping these people apart, and how might we transcend these divisions?
Sure. I think one is that sometimes it's just really easy to get caught up in doing what you're doing and
Mm,
not realize that what you're doing is a part of a bigger whole. Like I view the world as a big puzzle and we all are a piece in the puzzle, but we're not the entire puzzle.
mm,
And so sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in just what you're doing and not realizing the power of collaboration. And that collaboration starts with very simply doing what we're doing right now, conversation. It's difficult to collaborate with people that you cannot relate or have any connectivity to. And so you're right. Everybody's in their own silo doing their own thing. I think it's important to realize that I'm a piece in a puzzle, but the puzzle's much bigger than me.
mm.
And I think the people who are most effective are people who realize life is bigger than just them. You said it at the onset. We're not just an island, but most of the times we see our lives as we are this island out there by ourselves. There's nobody to help. There's nobody that understands. There's nobody there. And really, that is false. That is not true. So I think one is recognizing that you're not isolated. You're not alone. You're a piece in a puzzle and the puzzle's bigger than you. But I think number two is then being intentional to say, what are the conversations that need to start now? Because we can move one of two ways. We can move tactically or strategically.
Mm,
Tactically is all about what I'm doing right now. And so right now, you and I are having this conversation. So tactically, this is what we're doing. But strategically says, but let's think longer term. Let's think bigger picture. Let's think down the road about the larger goal. And so I think that it requires a combination of both tactics and strategy to say what are the conversations that need to be happening? Who do we need to begin to have those conversations with? And how can we begin to weave these things together while it's like a symphony. Symphony comes from the Greek word symphoneo.
mm.
It means everybody sounds together, but everybody doesn't sound alike. An entire symphony is not a violin. You got violins, you have trumpets, you have other instruments. Everybody keeps their own instrument, but we're just sounding those instruments together to produce something, something symphonic in nature. So I think that those two things are really important. And again, I think it starts as simple as doing what you're doing, having conversations that then lead to something greater in a strategic sense.
Beautiful. You know what? Maybe let's go down that road. So
Yeah.
when we have these conversations, tell me about the place intention plays. Tell me about aspects that we should keep in the back of our mind as we're
Mhm.
moving down that path.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one is understanding the goal. is the goal to be right or is the goal to be better?
Mm,
And I think many times connectivity is stifled because the goal is to be right, to shine and to be seen,
yeah.
versus to be effective and to get results. Like I've always been a results guy. So
Okay.
whether it's been, I do a lot of things in the political world, but on the policy side. And what do I mean by that? Because unfortunately, I believe that many faith leaders and faith has been hijacked in this country and made a political tool and a political weapon. So what I learned years ago is that I have to engage on the policy level. Like that's my assignment. So what does that mean on a real pragmatic basis for everybody listening? Is that you've got the political stuff. Those are the speeches, those are the rallies, those are the marches, those are the outward demonstrations. But the policy says, let's get in the room with the people who are writing the laws, writing the bills. These are the things, like these are the laws that are being enacted. Let's get into the legislative process, the judicial process, the executive process. Particularly in America, the three branches of government system we have here. That being said, I learned a long time ago to have those conversations and understand what was the goal. So this means I had to sit down with people who perhaps thought very differently about things than I did. But I had to understand the goal was not to leave the conversation right. The goal was to leave the conversation with results. And so I'll use one quick example.
Yeah.
In Denver, for example, we've now moved our headquarters to Atlanta, but when we were in Denver, it was during the pandemic, height of the George Floyd protests. And I remember I lived downtown Denver at the time, and I remember seeing the marches going by. And it grieved me so much, not because the issue didn't grieve me as an entirety. It grieved me so much. I picked up the phone. I made a call to one of our state representatives and I said to him, listen, I am not, my assignment is not out on the front line, but to picketing. I said, that's good and that's necessary, but that's not what I do. The legislators were known to send me bills, to redline them, give them my thoughts, rewrite the language, tell them this, give me that type of thing. When there was, elected officials, they would often have me in to, speak to them, speak to their folks, pray with them, encourage them, give them counsel. What do you think
Yeah.
about this? When there needed to be police reform, they would have me, the Attorney General of Colorado would bring me in to lead and spearhead some of those efforts to help in those ways. So I learned that I had a lot of power, but I needed to will that power in conversations that weren't necessarily popular,
Yeah.
that maybe was dealing with people who thought differently than me, and that it wasn't about it being public. So it wasn't about see me, everybody, see what I'm doing right now to have this conversation, me and so and so. So I had a rule. My rule was they could never take pictures with me. There's only very few that I've allowed to take pictures with me because I recognize that the policy can get missed in the politics. And so
Interesting.
for me, I recognized that results were the thing I was all about. So I didn't care if you were R or a D or an I, Republican, Democrat, Independent. I didn't care what you were. To me, it was if you're not getting results for the people I lead, you got to go.
I see.
Point blank, period, bottom line. And let's work on these things so that people get results in their life. And to the example I was giving in Colorado, we saw the nation's first comprehensive police reform and accountability bill that was sparred by one phone call and Colorado is like 4% African American.
I
So
know I live
it is
there.
yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know it, right? So
Yeah.
it is not like it is this, Atlanta like we're now where it is a total antithesis. It's that. So that's just an example of knowing when you go into the conversation, what's the goal? To be right or get results. And if you pick results, you'll always end up being right.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You had mentioned that you were clear on your assignment. And
Mhm.
and I guess it strikes me that you're balancing all these different things, working with all these different people. How do you maintain your center as you're navigating through these different groups?
That's so good. I realized this that people come, people go.
Oh.
So, I had to realize, and this is really a broader philosophy of life, is this is a lease, not a purchase.
Ah!
Um, and that philosophy helped me so much because I was able to realize that many times in life, as we're navigating through things, we overvalue present decisions. We overvalue, well, if I do this, if I do that, if I do this. And so when you overvalue it, you normally have overanalyzed it. When you overanalyze, that analysis produces paralysis
Yeah.
in many instances. And then that typically lives with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. So you end up becoming your own resistance. And so, you create this enemy in your imagination, but really it's your inner me that's fighting your energy. And
Ooh.
so, for me, to your question was how to keep the center. I realized this is a lease. So at some point I got to give it back. Right. And that's with everything in life. So it helps me to realize, don't get pulled way over here. Don't get pulled way over here. Don't let this stress you out, and don't be apathetic about it either. It's okay to remain focused on what I was sent to the earth to do. And for me, I'll just tell you, I believe it's really simple. I literally have it written in my notes,
Ooh.
to change as many lives as I can, as fast as I can, while I can. That's it.
Oh,
That's it.
you said to change as many lives as I can, as fast
Uh-huh.
as I can.
Uh-huh. As many lives as I can, while I can, as
Ooh.
fast as I can. Yep.
Okay, okay. And then because change is a very broad, you can change people's lives in all kinds of ways. Like what
Yeah.
does what
And negative
yeah,
ways people.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
guess what kind of change are you looking for?
Ooh. This is good. So for me, it goes back to the previous question. It's always going to be results oriented in the direction of positivity and prosperity. And prosperity is bigger than money.
Okay.
Prosperity is a wholeness word. It's this Hebrew word, shalom, which means nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing lacking, all is well. So I view life through the lens. This is why I love what you do, through a 360-degree component. So if we're only dealing with spiritual stuff, right? So, we are spirits, our subconscious mind. So that's important. But what about your finances? What about your family?
Yeah.
What about your fitness? What about your future? So to me, the change that I always endeavor to bring is positive change that is bringing prosperity into the lives of people, with the understanding that prosperity is so much bigger than money. In fact, I believe money is the lowest form of wealth.
Ooh.
It's a part of wealth, but it's the lowest form of wealth, because you can have money, but that doesn't get you health. You can have money that doesn't get you mental health. You can have money that doesn't get you friends. You can have money that doesn't get you love.
Yeah.
So it's part of it, but it's not all of it.
Okay, okay. Well, what are the you mentioned some other forms of wealth. You talked
Right.
about, it sounds like friends, you
Yes.
talked about health. I guess, can you expand upon that? What are the
Yeah.
highest forms of wealth?
Oh goodness, I love this. So I believe so. I think higher than money, because all of us have seen people with money, and you look at them and you say, "I learned that lesson as a teenager." I remember seeing the first multimillionaire that I knew personally, and I was a teenager, and I looked and I was like, "You are." This is what I said as a teenager. I said, "You're an evil person. Like you are evil. You are wretched. You are vindictive. You are a backstabber. You are a lie." I'm observing these traits, and in that moment, I said, "Money can't buy class. It can't buy morals. It can't buy advancement. It doesn't buy a good heart." And so in that moment, I was able to detether the two, because sometimes from the outside looking in, you could think that somehow money will make things better. It just magnifies what you are. It doesn't necessarily make anything better. It magnifies what a person is. So in terms of wealth, I think one, health is part of wealth.
Yeah.
Being able to enjoy your life, being able to breathe, exercise, eat well, all those things. I was on a journey. I lost 120 pounds.
Oh, geez.
Now, but originally it was 95. Now it's like up to 120. And part of that is I was successful, very successful. But I said, I'd preach the 2 Sunday morning services, and then I'd get home and I'd eat and just fall out and go to sleep. I said, this is no way to spend a beautiful Sunday, like sleep, because you're wore out, because ultimately you're not in the best physical shape. So to me, health is one of those things. Healthy relationships is one of those things.
Yes.
I think having the right people in your life can be one of the greatest forms of therapy.
Absolutely.
Um, can be one of the greatest forms of your ability to heal. Conversation to me is therapeutic. So, there's a scripture that says iron sharpens iron. I like to have iron around me. Aluminum won't know what to do with me. Aluminum will think I'm too much. But other iron will know what to do. So I believe if you keep your circle tight, you keep your circle right. And
Nice.
so healthy relationships. And I would say another is a healthy relationship with God to me is absolutely important. What good are any of those other things? And you have no sense of connectivity to who created you and why you were created and why you're here. And so to me, that's really important. I think those are much higher forms of wealth than money. Now, again, don't get it twisted. You need money, but it's a resource. It's not a source. It doesn't make you.
Ooh,
It just makes you be able to do things. Yeah.
love that. It's a
Yeah.
resource, it's not a source.
Not a
Yes.
source. Yep.
Yes, it is a
Yep.
tool you can use,
Yep.
but hey, there are
Yep.
higher
Yes.
things
Yes.
calling.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
And so as you, I'm thinking, you've done a lot, like, 120 pounds is no small feat. And
Yes.
just as a physician, even helping someone to move towards 10, 20 pounds is a huge deal. How'd you
Mhm.
do it?
So great question. One, it was that underpinning saying, okay, this is not the healthiest and best you. Right. Number two, it was a physical. So I'm a big proponent of men. Sometimes, the stats, a lot of times men are not good on taking care of their health. I was always different. I was the type of man that I would go in and every physical, I believed in using my benefits. So every annual physical, I used my benefits. I remember one year, I said, I got all these benefits. I said, I want to use them all. And they said, well, sir, you don't need this test. They said, Dr. Foreman, you don't need this test. You don't need this test. I said, listen, let me tell you something. Do I pay for it? Yes, sir. I said, well, every test on here that I pay for, I won't. I said, because, I'm going to use my benefits. I remember one year I was getting the ideology test. I was sitting in the room, doing that because I just believed that it was important to know your health and to know where you stand and what you need to do. And in one of those annual physicals, my primary care physician said, you are one click away, from being pre-diabetic. And I said, no, like not me, not the pastor, not the bishop, not the counselor, not the coach, not the entrepreneur, not me,
Yeah.
pre-diabetic. I was like, whoa, what is this? And so that prompted me to say, okay, you have to make a change because I heard a great saying the other day, and I told her the first two times I say it, I would give her credit, but this is the third time, so now it's mine. Is what goes in your mouth determines your health. What comes out of it determines your wealth. It's one of the most important organs of your body, or features of our body. And so I literally prayed. I said, God, you got to give me a strategy because I tried everything:
Yeah.
slim, slow, slim, fast, all the protein you want, no carbs, drink this juice, drink that juice, P90X, Tabo, you
Gosh.
know, I tried everything and things would work for a while, but I said, I need a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
The problem is my lifestyle. I'm very busy. I like the word productive versus busy. Very productive, full schedule, travel a lot. I have to do something different. And I literally prayed for a strategy. The day I prayed that, I saw a documentary on Netflix. Can't even tell you the name of the documentary anymore because it's not on Netflix anymore. Haven't been able to find it since then. The documentary essentially walked me through, food, and I was a fast food connoisseur. You name the restaurant, I could tell you the meal. If you say Burger King, I'd say give me a number six, add cheese, add mayo, add onion, cut it in half, fries and rings. And then I thought I was being healthy. And let me get a Diet Coke with that. I thought I was doing something. And so, but it wasn't healthy. But because of the way my life was and schedule was, that's
Yeah.
what the options were. And that day, cold turkey, I saw this documentary. I said, bingo, I got my answer. I stopped eating fast food, cold turkey. I stopped eating. So that was 2013. And since 2013, I've had fast food 3 times.
Wow.
Once because the
Commitment.
vice chairman of my board. Oh, listen, once I lock in, I lock in.
I hear it.
Uh, my the vice chairman of my board of directors, he said, "Bishop, you gotta try this particular burger joint that was in Texas." And I said, "You know I don't eat fast food." He said, "But you just have to try it." I said, "Okay." I tried that burger and said, "You made me break my thing for this." I said, "This was not worth it." And the only other 2 times were a chicken restaurant where somebody said, "You have to try their grilled, nuggets." And I literally fought it, and I was like, "Okay, well, they're grilled, okay." So I talked myself into it, said, "Okay, I'll do that." But, stopped eating fast food, stopped eating after 6, before intermittent fasting was really a thing,
Yeah.
and made a series of other changes and started walking because I recognized that gave me a sense of creativity when I was able to just get moving. I felt better, and the first 75 pounds I lost pretty quickly in 3 months' time.
Wow.
And I didn't even know I was losing the weight. I just started eating different. I wasn't taking anything. There was no pills, no surgery, nothing like that. And the way I found out is I went to speak at a leadership event up in Vail, right there in Colorado. I've been dressed pretty casually that spring, and the end of winter going into that spring, and been dressed pretty casually. So I didn't really pay attention to the weight difference. I just like, okay, it's feeling a little different. Okay. And the way I found out is literally I was getting ready. I had to put a suit on for that evening because it was a group of leaders I was speaking to. And I went to go put on my suit and I reached for my assistant. I called for my assistant. I said, "Whose suit is this?" He said, "Sir, that's your suit." I said, "No, it's not." I said, "This suit is hanging off my body. These pants are hanging off." I said, "This is not my suit." I said, "Y'all didn't pick the wrong suit up from the cleaners, or this is your suit." Like, this is not my suit. And I promise you, I was mad. I was, as we said in the South, I was hot as fish grease. I said, "Whose suit is this?" I said, "Sir, this is your suit." And so, I was frustrated. I said, "I can't believe this." And so I literally have a picture from that day where you could see the pants hanging off of me. I couldn't even wear the jacket because it looked like somebody else's jacket. It was hanging off of me. And I didn't have a scale at home because, years past, looking at the scale was just not something I wanted to do. Well, I got one on the way home and I looked and I said,
Wow.
I was 175. I was 250, 5'9". I carried it like a middle linebacker. So I looked like I played for the Falcons or the Broncos or something. And I was 175. I said, "Well, so how did this happen? Like what is this?" And then from there continued to lose and what have you. So only recently, since in the last few years, that I get into the gym and resistance training and things like that. But I literally pray for a strategy,
There
and
you
I think for
go.
some, to your point, is that for some, what works for everybody else may not work for you, and so sometimes you need a divine download.
I believe it. I believe it. You prayed for a strategy, you listened, and you got an answer.
Yeah.
And as a physician, I am a huge fan of intermittent fasting. I think that in our culture, we eat a lot. We eat many times, and I think that the body needs to rest.
Uh,
We need to
yes.
recharge. So
Yes.
love, love, love all the strategies. So you have a history of transforming yourself in many different ways. And I wonder, if we could funnel back to this community building
Mhm.
transformation. Um, I wonder if there's a specific example where you were able to bridge the spiritual and practical differences that led to not only just a profound change in, out there, but a profound change in here, in your
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, one we just talked about it is the physical. That was a big thing, and one of the things that happened with that, as I began to shed the fat, I discovered something internally that I was bitter. And as I began to shed that fat, I believe bitterness is as the residue of painful experiences we've had in life. And as I began to shed the fat, I was able to see some areas. Started my first business when I was 12, got in ministry at 12.
wow.
And so I had these two things that ran simultaneously. I was a pastor, an associate pastor at, 18, 19. I was a senior pastor at 21. But I built businesses and built companies. I've been hiring people, doing all that stuff since my teenage years. So I had dealt with a lot of people and a lot of stuff. Growing up, I grew up, I have an amazing mom who's my greatest fan to this day. But growing up, my stepfather was an abuser. He was a womanizer. He was a cheater. He's all the things you look at in a man and say, don't be that. So I took on this very parental nature and very parentified and paternal nature very early. I was a defender of my brother and sister and protector of them. Same for my mom. She never asked me to do that, but there was something in me that innately felt like I got to be this protector. So my whole life, I'm living with this mentality like I got to protect everybody and everything. So here I am, a teenager thinking like a dad, an adolescent thinking like a dad,
Yeah.
in my 20s, 30s, et cetera, thinking like a dad. And I have no natural kids. But the point was, is what that did is that would make me solve a lot of problems that weren't mine to solve
Mm.
and inject myself in situations that were not mine to inject myself into and be the hero for people who frankly, didn't need a hero. What they needed is they needed to go to God for themselves. But I would step in and do these things. Well, over the years of doing that, you can develop bitterness. And I did, and I didn't know it. And so inside there was this resentment and this bitterness that as I began to said that way, several things happened. One, it inspired many other people to get in shape physically. And so, I mean, there's been so many great testimonies of people who lost way more, 150 pounds, 175 pounds. They said, Bishop, I saw you do it. Like, I literally watched you do it in the
Yeah.
pulpit. I watched you. So that was great to see lives change, people improving their health, people no longer diabetic, people no longer on medication, people no longer, in those types of situations. But then internally, I was able to recognize that, and this is a powerful principle, I think, for everybody. If ever you feel burdened or burned out or frustrated with what you're doing, sometimes what you're doing isn't the issue. The way you're doing what you're doing
Mm.
is the issue. I kind of view it like carrying you ever come from the grocery store and you're trying to go into the house, you're trying to make it all in one trip. And so you've got like tons of bags on both your hands and you're trying to get stuff and you feel like, oh, this is so heavy. Oh, this is uncomfortable. It's only uncomfortable because of the way you're carrying the bags. It's not that there's something wrong with the weight that you're carrying. So for me, that was one of those experiences that changed me internally,
Yeah.
and that also, brought change to other people, and it impacted the community. We literally started a whole movement called Fit Harvest as a result of that. And so we would do workout classes at the church,
Yeah.
and people would, and it was so amazing because people would, they would look and they already looked to me as spiritual leader and then so many other things, business and so many other things. But now all of a sudden they're like, okay, but my pastor is also my trainer. And so, and so there was a whole nother level of accountability because they would not miss those workout classes. Like, I better not miss this class, which was a good thing. So a lot of people got a lot of great results.
You bring up a lot of really important points. I think that, um, over the as we go through life, as life is life, and we
Yes.
can, there sometimes we have intense emotions, and especially when there's a lot going on, don't necessarily have the
Yes.
time to process, let go, and so release is really important. And I wanna ask you, now that you've been through that, what are the ways that you found to be helpful, for release for you so that you don't
Ooh.
carry bitterness, so that you're able to, navigate these relationships with grace and ease?
Ooh, I love that question. So it took time for me to learn what worked because, again, from a kid, I just had one button on. That was the only button. I just have one setting. Like people were off. I'm like, what is off? I don't even know. What is that? I don't even know what that is. I had to realize because of the various responsibilities from ministry to business to community, whatever it was, that again, I had to find what worked for me. And so for me, the way that, and one of the strategies and methods that I use was say, okay, I can't look for what works for everybody else. I have to find what works for me. Because some people, they will shut down for a few days, shut down for weeks and that kind of thing. I said, that's not an option. I have to refuel my plane in the sky. I'm
Ah!
like Air Force One. I can't land the plane. I got to find a way to refuel this thing while it's in the air.
Yes.
The plane is too big to land this thing. And so, but thinking that way helped me. So I found other ways to do it. One, exercise became a thing. I used to hate going to the gym. Now it's therapy for me. I don't miss it, not just because of the physical benefits. I don't miss it because it is a release for me.
Yeah.
I'm able to think through things and say, you know what? Why are you mad about that? Leave that alone. You know what? Why did that bother you? Let that go. Conversation, which we touched on earlier, is therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
Um, I am able to have great conversations with people who can do two things at one time, and everybody can't do this. They can respect who I am and also receive the humanity of who I am,
Mm.
and there not be a degradation of either. And that's rare because sometimes people aren't vulnerable because they don't want to show their Clark Kent because they think that that somehow will make them less than. And so you got to have people who can see your Clark Kent, but still know you're Superman,
Yeah.
still know that you're Superwoman, respect that there's these dynamics of you as a human being. And, you're not always going to be in a smiling mood. You're not always going to be the happiest of places, but you'll get back there. So conversation is one of the others. And then I think thirdly is being able to, and I think this is so important. A lot of people talk about relationship with God, but it's not really a relationship. Because a relationship involves constant communication. Like, what husband and wife or seriously dating couple, like, do they see each other, once a week for an hour? But for most people, that's kind of the way they navigate their relationship with God. And so a relationship requires constant communication.
Mm.
And so it's one of those things that, to me, that is part of my daily life. So where somebody sees me, I might be driving down the street. They may think I'm singing a song. No, I'm praying. I'm talking to God. you know,
I
um,
love it.
I am. It's a relationship. So if it's a relationship, there's constant communication. If you love somebody, you're not. You're texting them throughout the day. You're communicating with them throughout the day. There's a constant symbiosis. There's a constant exchange back and forth. And so to me, that is one of those things that has helped me also to release because there's certain things you don't tell people, you just tell God, and then that's the end of it.
Yes. 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 Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
You are not just talking the talk, you walking the walk.
Yeah, let's strive to. I strive to. You know what frustrated me is when I would see people as a kid and teenager, I would see people in church and you see pastors preach and they would talk. And I was like, oh my God, they just seem so deep and so far away because the vernacular was different. The experiences were different, the way they would describe it. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I'll ever be able to have that type of relationship with God. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. And I love being authentic and real and, as much as possible because I think that when we're real, that's when we can heal. You have people as a physician, if people don't tell you what's really going on, you are not going to really be able to give them the help and the counsel and the expertise that you have.
Yeah.
And I think that is, as a leader, to me, that's super important. That I create a space and an environment and a culture where you can be real, so that way everybody's always going to be able to heal.
I love it. There is an art to holding space.
Mm.
It's beautiful. I wanna ask, as we're moving through this, are there practical daily habits that listeners can use to help bridge divides at work, in their community, at home?
Mm. I think so. I think home sometimes is the most difficult place to do that because you often see people in their best and their worst. You see people in their public persona and in their private persona. And so one of the things I think that's always helpful, back to what I just mentioned in my conversation, is recognizing that everybody is a human being. So the same grace we want, we have to give.
Mm,
The same mercy we want, we have to give. The same understanding we want, we have to give. So if you start by giving that, it makes what you're trying to get from a person by way of communication or understanding, or whatever, makes it a lot easier because I'm giving you what I want, which is grace and mercy and understanding and all of that. And it makes it so much easier. I think that's key. And I just say one other thing that I think is super helpful with that is recognizing that the goal isn't to convince people or convert people all the time. Sometimes the goal is to just have the conversation.
Yes.
Now you know where I'm at. I stopped trying to, and this is years ago. I said, I can't convince everybody. I can't convince anybody of anything. So I came up with this saying. There's two things that are true about people. One, people are going to do what they want to do. The second is like it. People are going to do what they want to do. So at the end of the day, I am not responsible for another person's life. I can't carry their weight. I can't carry their beliefs. Their, I can't carry any of that. So sometimes the goal is not to convert, it's not to change, it's just to have the conversation.
Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. Um, I know that our listeners are going to want to connect with you. How can they do it?
Oh, it's super simple. BishopForeman.com, FOREMAN.com. Books are on there, messages, music, all of our socials are on there. I'd love to get a DM from somebody if watching this, hearing this, added value to your life. Full disclosure, I get about 200 to 300 messages a day on Instagram. So it takes me a minute to respond, but I do respond. I'd love to know if something added value. And on social, all of it's at Bishop Foreman, FOREMAN.com. And there's tons of resources that will add value to the lives of people. But again, the website, BishopForeman.com, or just follow me on one of the social networks or any of them, all of them. The content's always going to add value to your life. I like to call it life giving content.
Ooh, beautiful. Bishop Foreman, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for being you and doing the work that you do. Um, I just see you continuing on to do great things.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And again, thank you for what you do in creating these conversations. Only eternity will tell how many lives are impacted by you doing what you do.
If you haven't heard it yet today, I appreciate you. The soul in me honors the soul in you. If you'd like to see more episodes like this, please subscribe or click here. And friends, if this spoke to you, leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you.